Greetings, everybody. This is Danny from Cradle of Filth, and you're watching Heavy Consequence. Blah.
I wanted to get right into the new album, Is Futile. And, this was recorded during the pandemic, as I understand it. Can you talk about that process of putting it together while in lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, it was, is it fair to say that I actually enjoyed the pandemic at first? Because we literally just finished 3 years of around the world touring, very extensive. 2019 was literally our busiest year ever. And at the culmination of that, which was the last show was November the 1st in Bruges in Belgium. Shortly after that, Lindsay departed us and Annabelle Iratney came on board. And we had the majority of the record already written on the tour. So we spent the next month and a half, well, not even really that, because Christmas is, people disappear for that. But we had the album ready, the drums laid down mid-January. And then I believe our guitarist came in, and then the pandemic struck proper and there were lockdowns and everything. And because we couldn't get our other guitarist in, our bass player down from Scotland, it was essentially just me and the producer in the studio for probably a couple of months. So I did all my vocals, and we also got a chance to reevaluate. We like working 6 hours a day. There was no need, there was no peer pressure. There was no this is going to be finished next week. Nobody knew what was going on, let alone the record company, let alone management. Governments didn't know what was going on. So it was quite an enjoyable time. And I don't think one that will be replicated again very soon, because with all the will and money in the world, it's just the time. And it just afforded us that luxury of just being very clinical and self-analytical about stuff, especially about the vocals and the production. And there was one track that wasn't going to make the record, and we made the record because we kind of rejigged it and reworked it and rewrote parts of it. So, yeah, I mean, the pandemic was very beneficial to us. We were one of the few we were very lucky. Thankfully, we weren't one of the people that just were about to leave to go on tour, had a tour bus, concerts booked, visas booked, and then suddenly kaput. So when I say I enjoyed the pandemic, I was enjoying it because I was working a lot right up until about a year ago. And we finished the album mid-October. And then we had to sit on it for a whole year, because obviously what's the point of releasing it when you can't support it? Mm-hmm. Even so, we've just done an American tour and a release show at the London Roundhouse, a very prestigious venue in Camden. But that's pretty much done until mid-February. So, I mean, if it wasn't a pandemic, if things weren't still going on with the virus, then we'd be out right now. So it's still affecting us.
Yeah, I actually was going to ask you that later on, but I'll ask you that now since you brought it up. You just completed this US tour. And what was it like for you? You were like one of the only overseas acts to come to the US, one of the first to come to the US since the concert industry opened up again. A lot of the UK and European acts haven't come over yet. And for you and the band, what was the experience like with the restrictions in place? And not only for the band, what were you witnessing from the audience of fans who hadn't been to live music in so long? Was it cathartic in any way? If you can talk on that.
Well, it was absolutely cathartic, and I believe everybody did attend the concerts, and naturally they were a little bit down on what they'd normally be. There was one venue we played, it's like 1,200 and something tickets sold. So not on that, and I think just over 1,000 turned up. So that's what, a sixth of the audience decided, you know what, it was a good idea when we bought them, but now I'm not that keen on, integrating with fellow humans. And it kind of got the gist of that all around the States. And we had to jump through so many hoops just to get there. We had to get these very special visas where we had to provide evidence that we were like a big worldwide global band, and then we had to go and get our visas from a different place, which we actually had to travel to Ireland to get them. So we had to ferry all our crew there, and they didn't make it easy for us at all. But we persevered, we got through, nothing went down on our tour. I mean, I've heard of other tours where drummers have got sick, or crew members or singers have had to disappear and they've had to cancel shows. But we were following, quite strict COVID, not overly strict, to be honest. I mean, there were a few times we'd sneak out to a Walmart, but I mean, England's gone back to normal. I mean, you don't have to wear masks anywhere. I mean, I feel I need to, but when we came to America, we were quite aware that protocols were in place. Nobody backstage, everybody wearing masks in the crew, when they're working, local crew. And there were a lot of venues that were undertaking PCR tests to get in. So it was pretty strict, but luckily, very luckily, we survived it. I mean, there was a point where we got the usual tour bug where everybody, feels sick for a few days and it goes around the bus and everybody's like, oh my God. First thing you think of nowadays, isn't it? As soon as you get anything, it's like, no, I'm dying of COVID. In actual fact, no, you've just got a rudimentary, tour bug, tour arse, as we call it.
Yeah, and back to the album, obviously you said a lot of it was written before the pandemic, but the title itself, Existence is Futile, seems very appropriate for the pandemic and for these times. Can you talk about if any of the album was informed by the pandemic, or are there other themes that we should be looking for throughout the songs on the album?
Well, the only thing that influenced the album that came directly from the pandemic was literally just the amount of time we're allowed to work on the records and the isolation that afforded us. All the songs, I mean, some of the songs were tinkered within the studio naturally, but now all the lyricism and the themes and everything is all prior to the pandemic. And you know what? Mankind's been fucked up long before that came along. They'll be fucked up again, no doubt. So I wouldn't say it was fortuitous is it's a wrong terminology, I think. But I mean, it does reek very much of the COVID and the lockdowns and everything. But no, I mean, it was the title was drawn from 3 years on the road, touring lots of big metropolis, as you will do, being in a band. You don't play villages, you play big sprawling metropolises, metropoli, whatever. And just at one point during all that, I think it was down in South America, I kind of got the vibe that, we were being overpopulated, suffocated. How are we feeding all these people? And I started getting the vibe of existentialism, and started reading a few books like Sartre and Camus and people like that. And I don't know, just seemed quite apt. Whereas the last two records, the first of which, Hammer of the Witches, was medieval based, and then we had Cryptoriana, which is obviously about Victorian age's affiliation with the macabre and spiritualism and all that guff. And so I thought this album was great, being brought kicking and screaming more into a more modern concept.
Yeah. And in terms of the lineup, this is the third album with the newer lineup, if you will, and the first with Annabelle. Can you talk about, having a few years under your belt with the newer personnel, and then what Annabelle brought to the table as far as recording and writing?
I think it's the best lineup the band's had. We all get along famously. Everybody's super professional. We're good friends when we're on the road. We've got a very twisted sense of humour amongst all of us, one that might not appeal to everybody. We've got a great crew. That's really important. We've worked really hard to get to where we are now with this crew. Great man. We've got a great team all around the band, which obviously enables us to get on with the most important thing, which is being a band. But yeah, the lineup's awesome. The departure of Lindsay was, I think, mainly due to the fact that 3 years worth of touring. She was from Canada, we're from Europe. If we were doing Europe in the summer and joining all the summer festivals up, she'd be like in Europe for like 3 to 4 months at a time. And I think it really was playing with her well, you know, it was making her feel a bit lonely and missing her family, and psychologically, I think it was fucking around with her. But Annabelle's a breath of fresh air. She's very talented. She's got a great voice. She's from London, so I can relate. You know, we can relate to her outlook on things. No, she's great to work with. She's fun to be around. She gets on very well with everybody. She integrated perfectly into not only the album scenario but the live scenario as well. And we had a great time in the States. It was, you know, despite the obstacles and all the hurdles we had to jump or crawl under, we had a fantastic time.
Great. And let's talk about a few of the songs on the album. One of my personal favorites is Black Smoke Curling from the Lips of War. I really enjoy that track. It's very intense, yet also quite melodic at the same time. Can you talk about that one in particular a little bit, both musically and lyrically?
Where to start, really? I can't really speak about it musically because, I mean, you just described it. I mean, it's all in the eye of the beholder. Lyrically, it deals with the I guess you could liken it to America being, you know, as foretold in the Book of Prophecies. And I'm not saying necessarily America, but this is how they prophesy some of it, that America will be attacked by Russia and China, you know, and see America as a great harlot Babylon, that it's going to have this massive fall at some point. An analogy for just the way the world is going in general, that we've built ourselves up for. You know, we built this Tower of Babel. We're trying to reach godhood. We're trying to, you know, control the world, and you know, we set ourselves up for quite a big fall. And obviously, the lyricism is always very neoclassical and never sort of go too modern with anything. So nobody need to worry about me mentioning sports cars and girls with big or anything like that. So it has a very big, I think the whole album has a very biblical context to it anyway, and more so with this song. But yeah, I think this was actually the first song that was written toward the album, if I remember rightly. I seem to remember being in Mexico in a hotel room, and our bass player being quite excited about some stuff he'd written. And I believe this was the origins of this song.
Great. And another one I wanted to mention was one of the recent singles, Necromantic Fantasies. Another one I just like, if you can speak on briefly from a lyrical point of view.
Well, this song, I mean, was probably the most, how would you call it? Gothic, I suppose, I mean, for want of a better word, gothic, romantic, sort of fairy tale-ish track on the album. The one that probably people more hear to Cradle of Filth in the past. We always had to have a sly nod to Gothicism and that sort of romantic era, and that the video kind of mirrors that very nicely. And compared to its predecessor, Crawling King Chaos, which both videos were shot back to back incidentally during the pandemic, under the director Vicente, who came all the way from the States and quarantine and what have you. But we tried to make them like chalk and cheese because that's what they like musically. Crawling King Chaos is really brutal and, you know, hellish and blast beats and spiraling biblical keyboards, and Necromantic Fantasies is more of a slow pace, slow burn, a bit of new wave of British heavy metal in there, really big catchy chorus. Yeah, and lyrically, it just deals with the union of two souls that have kind of have this existentialist crisis and realize they're going to die. So what the hell? They're going to live the life. They're going to, you know, burn all the paths before them and just face death and embrace it and enjoy it, which I think is kind of a moral issue to it as well.
And I always like to talk about how the album closes. And I know in this case, there are a couple of bonus tracks, but the actual standard track list ends with Us Dark Invincible, which I really enjoyed as well. And if you don't mind speaking on that one as too, and the kind of decision to end the proper album with that song.
Yeah, it's more of it's like a call to arms, sort of a rallying, like a clarion call, I suppose, for us, you know, people like-minded, people who have endured the album, endured this existential crisis, and have come to the point to realize, you know, well, if existence is futile, if it truly has no other purpose, there's no grand overarching religious plan for us, no pearly gates, no you know, joyous netherworld, and literally it's just a process of evolution, and we're very lucky to be here because it's, you know, we're a drop in you know, one small rock floating in the absurdity of space. Then if that is truly the case, then we should grasp it with both hands and embrace it and enjoy it while we have it. The kind of lesson throughout the album is also one of respect as well, that if we are going to enjoy it, you know, we're not just going to leave it a burning, littered mess, which currently it is. But yeah, it's a kind of way to tie up the album and leave on a bit of a positive message. We played this track actually for the first time at the London Roundhouse, which was that show we undertook for the album launch, and went down really well. It seems like it's going to be a good crowd pleaser, maybe because of the chanty-like chorus, but yeah, it ends on a slightly ominous note as well, and I think that's a good. I always like that kind of thing, you know. Yeah, it's all very joyous, and then just creeps back at the end and reminds you that, yeah, be careful. We're still watching.
As I understand it, the band started in 1991, which would make 2021 the 30th anniversary of Cradle of Filth. And I just wanted to ask, is there, over the years...
I mean, who asked? Does it make you feel old? Yeah.
Well, no, I think you should be very proud of that. But I wanted to ask, is there one maybe highlight that stands out among the rest in 30 years, maybe either a concert, an album, a festival, or another event that you can point to and say, wow, this was like the pinnacle of those 30 years that you look back at, that was quite amazing?
Well, I'm hoping that the pinnacle hasn't been reached as yet. And somebody actually asked me that question yesterday, really literally word for word. And I was like, there's been so many good things, you know, there's been peaks and troughs, ups and downs, mostly great. I wouldn't say every album's a pinnacle. To actually get it released, reached out to the fans, going back out on the road, you know, improving the longevity of the band. Because as you say, 30 years ago, I wouldn't think I would be in the position I am now. And so I'm very grateful for that. And I still love the job, because that's essentially what it is. I mean, when we started out, it wasn't a job until I actually took a year out and tape traded the band to death to get them noticed. I would say one of my favorite memories was definitely the 10 weeks we did headlining the B stage, the American Ozfest, back in 2003. Just because it was a long 10 weeks summer, you know, it was a great lineup. We headlined, we had Voivod, we were taking Killswitch, Shadows Fall, Sworn Enemy, and Chimera out with us on dates that Ozzy wasn't playing. But on the main stage, you had Ozzy, Disturbed, Manson, Korn. It was, you know, it was a huge lineup and things we got up to. And I mean, it was just immensely fun. And something that when you imagine being a band, or like, yeah, I want to do that, I want to be a rock star, whatever. Well, that's the kind of thing you imagine in your head, and that's exactly what it was like. It was brilliant. All the people were awesome. Not saying we haven't played or had better shows, or, you know, bigger times, but that just stands out, you know, as a huge moment in the band's career. It's 10 weeks. When I came back, my blood was literally green coloured from all the Jägermeister I've been drinking, because it was sponsored by that. I came back with Jägermeister skateboard. I think I had a Jägermeister heart attack at one point.